Good morning. Welcome to the Oasis Global Gathering. My name's Steve Chalke. I'm the founder of the Oasis charity, and I'm also one of the ministers of Oasis Church in Waterloo, central London. And just like we often say, whether you've made this gathering a regular part of your week throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, or whether it's the very first time you've joined us, whether you live in the UK or elsewhere around the world, a huge welcome to you. Now, the theme of this morning's gathering is interdependence. Together, we thrive. Alone, we struggle. And so, as we begin, let's pause just for a moment to listen to and reflect on these famous words from Jesus. A new command I give you. Love one another. As I've loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my followers if you love one another. Well, a wonderful example of exactly what this kind of interdependence and love is all about is the work of an organisation called International Health Partners. IHP, as it's known for short, acts as a kind of medical bridge by creating partnerships between the healthcare industry and delivery or logistics organisations to provide medicines and other healthcare products to disaster-hit communities around the world, as well as to support long-term health programmes. All IHP's work is inspired by the example and the teaching of Jesus. And over the last 2.5 weeks, they've been heavily involved in procuring medicines and other supplies as a response to the catastrophic explosion that shook the city of Beirut in Lebanon on Tuesday, the 4th of August, a disaster which left so many people dead, wounded or homeless. Louise, who works for IHP, is a part of Oasis Church Waterloo, and she's here to tell us more.
Hello, my name is Louise. I've been a member of Oasis Church Waterloo for the past 5 years. In my day job, I work for International Health Partners, a global health charity that specialises in coordinating donations of medical aid to places around the world where it's needed. We are a small team, but because we work through local partners, we have a big reach, working in over 30 countries. One of our biggest programmes is in Lebanon. As you'll have seen from the horrific images and footage, on the 4th of August, a massive explosion took place in the port of Beirut, and the resulting shockwave rippled across the city, killing over 200 people, injuring 7,000, and leaving 300,000 people homeless. At least 15 medical facilities, including 3 major hospitals, were damaged in the blast. The infrastructure damage, combined with the massive influx of patients seeking care, has severely strained the provision of health services. On top of this, much of the national warehousing is located in the area around the port, and much of it was destroyed, and as a result, there's been an enormous loss of stocks of medicines and medical supplies. Even before this happened, Lebanon was facing some really big challenges. An economic crisis, hyperinflation, and widespread poverty has left many families unable to afford even basic essentials like food and medicine. Lebanon has the highest number of refugees per capita in the world. Around a quarter of the population are refugees, many from Syria and Palestine, and they have very little access to healthcare. And then the outbreak of COVID-19 has created further strain on already overwhelmed basic services. This latest disaster has made the situation even more precarious. At the time of the explosion, one of our in-country partners had 7 containers of medicine waiting clearance at the port. These were due to be used at health facilities across the country, particularly those serving refugee populations. All 7 were totally destroyed. IHP is responding to the crisis by airlifting urgent shipments of the most critical needed medicines and medical supplies. This includes antibiotics, wound dressings, and chronic medications. 2 shipments are already on their way, and we're hoping to send at least 4 more. If you'd like to help, there are things you can do. Firstly, Please pray for the people of Beirut, for all those who have lost loved ones or have been left traumatised by this event, and also for the healthcare workers who are trying to provide care under really difficult circumstances. Please pray for IHP that we're able to source the most needed items from the companies who make them, and that we can navigate the complex logistics that are needed to get them where they need to be. We're also trying to raise financial support to send the shipments. If you're able to donate or would like to keep up to date on our response, then please visit our website on www.ihpuk.org or search for International Health Partners on social media. Thank you.
Thanks, Louise. What a fantastic and much needed example of what it means to live out Jesus' words, love one another. Well, following on from there, as I said earlier, today our theme is interdependence. We're continuing our series looking at what we call the 5 I's, the 5 core values which over the years have underpinned the work of Oasis Church Waterloo and which, of course, we recommend to all. Just to remind you, they are intimacy with God, involvement in society, inclusion of all, interdependence with each other, and lastly, influence through service. And in a moment, Nath, who serves as a minister of Oasis Church Waterloo alongside me, is going to further explore interdependence, the 4th of these. But just before he does that, Joe, who leads Oasis Hub in the city of Bath, is going to read to us from the Bible, from the Apostle Paul's first letter to his friends living in the city of Corinth, from chapter 12 and verses 12 to 27. And then straight after Nath has spoken, Leanne, who's part of the leadership team of Oasis Church in Waterloo, is going to lead us in some prayers.
Just as a body, though one, has many parts, but all its many parts form one body, so it is with Christ. For we were all baptized by one Spirit so as to form one body, whether Jews or Gentiles, slave or free, and we were all given the one Spirit to drink. Even so, the body is not made up of one part, but of many. Now if the foot should say, because I'm not a hand, I do not belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I do not belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? But in fact, God has placed the parts in the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. If they were all one part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, but one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you, and the head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you. On the contrary, those parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable, and the parts that we think are less honourable we treat with special honour. And the parts that are unpresentable are treated with special modesty, while our presentable parts need no special treatment. But God has put the body together, giving greater honour to the parts that lacked it, so that there should be no division in the body, but that its parts should have equal concern for each other. If one part suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part is honoured, every part rejoices with it. Now you are the body of Christ, and each one of you is a part of it.
The coach was frustrated. The players were frustrated. They were miles better than the team they just played against, but they'd been well beaten. As they sat in the changing room after the game, the coach thought about giving a stirring speech, but instead she just said, extra training session, Monday evening, and I want to see every single one of you. Monday came and 22 players trudged in silence, heads down. The coach gave each of them a piece of A4 paper and a pen. She said, write down your name, then roll the paper up into a ball, then throw that into the middle of the room. The girls did as they were told. The coach took out her stopwatch and she said, right, you've got 2 minutes to find the piece of paper with your name on it. Go. The girls ran into the middle of the room, everyone searching frantically for their piece of paper. 2 minutes passed, the whistle blew, and only 3 players had found their names. The coach told the 3 of them to roll up their papers again and throw them back onto the pile. This time, she said, you've only got 1 minute. But then she gave the players a different instruction. This time, she said, pick up the first piece of paper that you get to and give it to the person whose name is on it. Go. By the time she blew the whistle, a minute later, every one of the players was clutching a piece of A4 paper with their name on it. On Saturday, the coach said, you spent the whole match searching for your own piece of paper. You only win if you look for each other's. As Steve said this morning, we are talking about the third of our 5 I's, our 5 core values, and it's interdependence, which we've defined as this. We believe that we are created to be community together, just as God is community, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. We practice this interdependence through our commitment to giving and sharing our resources with each other, including our money, time, and skills. Joe read to us from 1 Corinthians chapter 12. As many of you will know, 1 Corinthians is called that because it's the first letter written by Paul, one of the early church leaders, to a group of followers of Jesus in a place called Corinth in Greece. It was a difficult time. This new community had been formed, all people who believed the stories of Jesus and wanted to commit their lives to following his example. But the problem was that they came from different backgrounds. There were some Jewish people who had spent their lives following the Jewish faith, born and bred Israelites who followed the law. Then there were some Gentiles, some non-Jewish people who were much more influenced by Greek philosophy and didn't really know anything about Jewish law. But even if they did, they still wouldn't have followed it. There were rich people and poor people. There were slaves and there were free people. There were women who were being given the opportunity to step up and lead in such a way that wouldn't have been allowed in many places in Corinthian society at all, let alone in religious society. All of these people, this strange mix of people, they want to follow Jesus, and they're trying to work out together how to do this. So, unsurprisingly, they soon fall out over a few things about how to do this new kind of church. So Paul is writing to them to settle some of these arguments. And towards the end of this letter, he uses the example of a body with many parts to try and get his point across. He says a body has many parts, but all of those parts join together to make up one body. It's the same with you. You're all different, but you together make up this church community. Now, one of the interesting things about this is that the idea of using parts of the body as an analogy would have been common to the people who heard or read this letter. It was used all the time in letters written in the ancient world, but there was one crucial difference. It was usually used by those in power to reinforce that they were in charge, that they were more important. You see, you people, you're like a finger, you're not that important, but me, I'm like the brain. You can't do anything without a brain. That's the kind of thing that would have been written. So Paul starts this analogy, and some people who listened to the letter, they would have thought that they knew where Paul was going to go with this. Oh, the rich, the powerful, the well-to-do, they should be the ones calling the shots. When we argue, they are the ones who should make the decision. But that's not where Paul goes with it. He writes, the body is not made up of one part, but of many. God has placed the parts in the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. There are many parts, but one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. And the head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you. You are all needed to be part of this community. All of you. We're dependent on each other. We're better together. Paul is saying that regardless of where you've come from, regardless of status, power or poverty, there's a role for you to play. There's a role for all of us in this community. And a couple of thousand years later, we're still having very similar conversations. A few months after we moved to London, my wife and I went back to South Wales for a weekend, and we spoke to some friends of ours who were part of the leadership team at our old church. We'd been really involved in that church, but we'd struggled to settle into a new church in London. We talked about how there was nothing as good as the church that we had left. Why couldn't we just find a church like that in the whole of London? This couple listened to us. But then they said that it had taken them ages to settle into that church which we had loved so much. What they had learned is that going to some church for a while, seeing if it works out for you, then going somewhere else for a while, that doesn't really work. What we needed to do, they suggested, was commit to somewhere, get involved, throw ourselves in, see how we could be part of a community, see what we could bring to that community, how we could serve that community, and not just be a spectator on the sidelines asking what can this church do for us. And I wonder if that's even more tempting at the moment. Because we can't meet together physically, we're no longer bound by geography. You could be watching our global gathering on a Sunday morning, or you could watch a different church. You could have 3 or 4 churches on the go, dip in and out every now and again. See which one's got the best talks, which one's got the best music. You could kind of do a bit of church channel hopping. But I don't think that's what church is about. Church, when it works, is a community of believers from all walks of life, all ages, sharing experiences and pulling together to achieve a common goal, dragging the kingdom of God into their local community through the renewal of each other. And we do it because we work best together. We work best when we're in community. That's how we're made. Koinonia, which is the Greek word that's often translated in the Bible as fellowship. It means joint owner. And it comes from this old practice of a farmer who couldn't afford a cow, putting money in with other farmers to buy one together. It demands commitment from all of them working together for a common goal. And I think this is particularly important at the moment. We live in a country that's becoming more and more divided. Before 2016, there really weren't that many people in the UK who had a strong opinion either way about the European Union. But now everyone is leave or remain. The stats say that the middle ground is going away. We're told that young people vote Labour, old people vote Conservative, Londoners want to stay in the EU, Northerners want to leave. We're becoming a more divided country, which has an impact on the words that we say to each other and how we treat each other. Hate crimes involving racial and religious discrimination are far higher than they were a decade ago. And I think the church has an important role to play in this. Because a church isn't a club where everyone thinks the same thing and acts the same way. A church is a community bound together, trusting one another, accountable to one another. A church community is about difference. As I end, there's an old proverb which says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. It's easy to be a spectator or take a few weeks out, or maybe to move to another church when the one that you're currently going to doesn't give you exactly what you want. But if we're actually going to achieve something, if we're actually going to transform our communities, we need to do it together. So this morning, why don't we commit to giving it another go? Even if it is online church, show up on time. Leave that WhatsApp message unanswered until the end of the service. Join a small group. Finally get around to setting up that standing order. Volunteer for something. Because there's strength in diversity. We need each other. We all need to pull together. We're only going to change our communities when we stop working independently and commit to working interdependently.
I've been trying the Couch to 5K challenge these last couple of weeks, so to distract myself from what my legs are trying to do, I've been listening to lots of podcasts. Now this week I listened to one by Richard Rohr, and in it he talks about a well-known icon by the Russian painter Andrei Rublev. It's an icon called the Trinity, and it shows that first relationship, and it could be the ultimate image of interdependence. So over the next few minutes, I'd like to invite you to join me in a reflection based around this iconic image.
This is the icon here. Take a close look. What do you see? What comes to mind as you look at it? Anything? How about the colours? What colours do you notice? Notice that the figure on the left is wearing gold. This is the Father, the Mother, fullness, wholeness, the ultimate source. And the figure in the centre is the incarnate Christ wearing blue, the colours of sea and sky. Notice how he holds out 2 fingers on the table, a sign that in Jesus, divinity and humanity are both held within. And on the right, the Spirit, the colour green of new life. The Spirit is the giver of life that starts growing inside. This icon shows the Holy One in the form of 3, being together and enjoying the company of each other. In the beginning was the relationship. Look at the Spirit's hand, pointing towards the open place on the table, inviting, offering. At the front of the table is a rectangular space. Some art historians tell us that in this spot there are traces of glue on the original icon. They suggest that perhaps there was once a mirror glued to the front of the table. There was always room for another person at the table. There was always space for another to be part of this relationship, another person to love and be loved. All of creation was invited to see themselves in that mirror, to see themselves as part of this divine relationship. We are each invited to take our own place at the table. And as we take our space in the relationship, well, how should we present ourselves? Jesus arrived in this world as a baby, vulnerable and defenseless. He was reliant on relationship from day one. So when we take our place at the table, perhaps we should also take it with vulnerability, a position that says, I'm going to let you influence me. I'm going to allow you to change me. The mirror has been lost over the years, both in the icon and often in our understanding of who God is. Because we don't get to pick who can see their face within this divine relationship. The space at the table is there for the whole creation to see their reflection in, without exception. So look at that space in the image. How does it feel to see that you are invited to be part of it, just as you are now? Do you feel ready and able to see your face there? Or is there something getting in your way? And then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness. In the beginning was the relationship, and you are invited to be part of it. Lord, thank you that you are not in any way limited to our small human capacity to love, but that you have an abundance of love that overflows and is more than enough for every single one of your good creation to be loved, welcomed, and invited to be part of the divine relationship with you and with each other. Amen.
Like Nate said, church, when it works, isn't a club where everyone thinks the same thing and acts in the same way, but it's a community of joint owners from all walks of life, all ages, sharing experiences and pulling together, bound together, trusting one another. A church community is not about independence, but rather about interdependence. So we're back to exactly where we began. As Jesus said, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I've loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you're my followers, if you love one another." Now, to end this morning's gathering, a song on exactly that theme. It's called No Outsiders.
You are a refuge, you have no borders. When I was a stranger knocking at your door, you took me in with no questions and no conditions. When I was a sinner running from your grace, you called me friend. You called me friend. And there are no outsiders to your love. We are all welcome, there's grace enough. When I have wandered, Lord, your cross is the open door. There are no outsiders, I'm not an outsider to your love. You are the harbor in every tempest. When my soul was shipwrecked, tossed upon the waves, you calm the storm. You are the Father, there are no orphans. Every tribe and nation gathered in your arms sings with one voice, sings with one voice.